The small bell above the cafe door chimed as another group of customers walked in from the chilly autumn air. The warm scent of coffee and freshly baked pastries welcomed them, along with the steady hum of conversation that filled the cozy space. It was just past noon on a Tuesday, and Lily wiped her forehead with the back of her hand as she balanced 3 plates along her arm. "Coming through," she called with a practiced cheerfulness, weaving between tables with the grace of someone who had done this dance 1,000 times before. She set down the plates with quick precision. The veggie omelet for the businessman in the corner, blueberry pancakes for the college student buried in textbooks, and avocado toast for the woman typing furiously on her laptop. "Can I get you anything else?" Lily asked, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear that had escaped from her ponytail. When they shook their heads, she moved on to her next table, notepad ready and smile in place. The downtown corner cafe wasn't fancy. Its wooden floors creaked with age, the booths were patched in places, and the ceiling fans spun lazily overhead. But it had charm, walls covered with local artwork, mismatched vintage chairs, and wide windows that let in streams of golden sunlight. Most importantly, it had loyal customers who came as much for the atmosphere as for the food. Lily had been working here for just over 3 years. She hadn't planned on being a waitress for this long. Like many, she had taken the job temporarily while figuring out what to do with her life. But the months turned into years, and something about the routine, the people, and the steady income kept her coming back. The customers knew her by name now, and she knew their orders before they spoke them. "Order up," called Hank from the kitchen window, his weathered face appearing briefly as he slid 2 plates onto the counter. Lily nodded and grabbed them, feeling the familiar heat through the thin cloth napkin she used to protect her hands. As she delivered the food, she paused to fill water glasses and clear empty plates from another table. Her movements were automatic, perfected through countless shifts. What her coworkers and regular customers didn't know, what nobody in this part of town knew, was that Lily wasn't just a waitress. In the quiet hours of early morning and late night, in a small apartment across town, her fingers danced across an entirely different surface than cafe tables and coffee mugs. Music had been her first love, long before she ever carried a serving tray. As a child, she would sit for hours at her grandmother's old keyboard, picking out melodies by ear. Her parents had scraped together enough money for lessons when she was 8, and her teacher had called her a natural talent. For years she practiced diligently, mastering classical pieces and eventually writing her own compositions. By the time she graduated high school, Lily had earned a partial scholarship to the state university's music program. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but with student loans and a part-time job, she made it work for 2 years. Then her father got sick. The medical bills piled up, her mother took on extra shifts, and Lily made the choice to put her education on hold. She moved back home, picked up more hours at the cafe, and helped however she could. 3 years later, her father was better, but the family's finances were still recovering. Lily continued working full-time at the cafe, sending money home when possible. She had managed to save enough to buy a decent digital keyboard for her apartment, and in those precious moments when she wasn't working or sleeping, she played. Music became her secret world, her private escape from the reality of serving coffee and clearing tables. It wasn't that she hated her job. The cafe had its moments of joy, and some days she genuinely enjoyed the rhythm of waiting tables and the brief connections with customers. But when she played, she became someone else entirely. Someone with dreams bigger than memorizing the daily specials and balancing 5 plates at once. "Hey, daydreamer, table 6 needs their check," called Rita, the other waitress on shift, snapping Lily back to the present. "Sorry, on it," Lily replied, hurrying to the register to print out the receipt. Rita shook her head with a good-natured smile. "Where do you go in that head of yours? Every now and then you get this faraway look like you're somewhere else completely." Lily shrugged. "Just thinking about what I need to do after work." It wasn't entirely a lie. She did have plans that involved her keyboard and the new piece she'd been working on for weeks. The lunch rush continued, and Lily fell back into the familiar rhythm. Take orders, deliver food, refill drinks, clear tables, repeat. The hours passed in a blur of movement and small talk. She chatted with the regulars, the retired teacher who came in every Tuesday for the soup of the day, the pair of nurses who stopped by after their night shifts, the young writer who nursed a single cup of coffee for hours while scribbling in a notebook. None of them knew about her music. It wasn't that she deliberately kept it a secret, but somewhere along the way, she had stopped mentioning it. The longer she went without playing publicly, the more her confidence faded. Sometimes she wondered if she had been as talented as her teachers once claimed, or if they had just been encouraging a passionate child. During a rare quiet moment, Lily leaned against the counter, watching as Carlos, the cafe owner, tinkered with the small upright piano in the corner of the room. Every Friday and Saturday evening, the cafe hosted local musicians, transforming from a simple eatery into a cozy venue for acoustic performances. The old piano had seen better days, but Carlos insisted on keeping it well maintained. "Having trouble?" Lily asked, walking over with a fresh cup of coffee for him. Carlos sighed, accepting the mug gratefully. "One of the keys is sticking again, and our regular player for this weekend just called to cancel, some family emergency." He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I need to start making some calls to find a replacement, or we'll have an empty stage on Friday night." Lily nodded sympathetically, her eyes drifting to the piano. Without thinking, she reached out and pressed one of the keys, feeling the familiar resistance beneath her finger and hearing the clear note ring out. "You play?" Carlos asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily pulled her hand back quickly. "Oh, a little. Just a hobby." The words came automatically. The same dismissive phrase she'd been using for years whenever anyone happened to discover her musical background. Carlos looked like he wanted to ask more, but the bell above the door chimed again as a large group entered the cafe. Lily excused herself and hurried to greet them, relieved for the interruption. As the afternoon stretched on, Lily found herself glancing at the piano whenever she passed it. The thought of playing it, of playing for others, sent a flutter of both longing and terror through her chest. It had been so long since anyone had heard her play. What if she wasn't good enough? What if all those years of practice and passion amounted to nothing special? Her shift ended at 5, and as she hung up her apron and collected her tips, she overheard Carlos on the phone, his voice tinged with frustration. "I understand, but I really need someone for Friday." "Yes, I know it's short notice. All right, thanks anyway." He hung up and made another call with similar results. Lily counted her tips silently, trying not to listen but feeling a familiar tug inside her chest. Part of her wanted to speak up, to offer her services, but another part, the part that had grown comfortable with hiding her talent, kept her quiet. "See you tomorrow," she called to Carlos as she headed for the door. He waved distractedly, already dialing another number. Lily stepped outside, breathing in the cool evening air. Her apartment was a 20-minute walk away, and she used the time to clear her head. The fallen leaves crunched beneath her shoes, and the streetlights were just beginning to flicker on. By the time she reached her building and climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her small apartment, the cafe and its piano problem felt distant. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and made a beeline for the keyboard set up by the window. Her fingers found the keys automatically, and she began to play. The day's tensions melted away as the music filled her tiny living room. This was where she felt most herself, most alive. For the next hour, she lost herself in the music, playing everything from Bach to Debussy to her own compositions. As the final notes of a piece faded away, she sat in silence for a moment, then reached for her notebook to jot down a new melody line that had come to her. Tomorrow would bring another shift at the cafe, another day of orders and tables and tips. But for now, in this small space with just her music for company, she was more than just a waitress. She was an artist waiting to be discovered. Morning light streamed through the cafe windows as Lily arrived for her shift, tying her apron around her waist. The usual breakfast crowd was already forming, early risers needing their coffee fix before work, a few students with open laptops, and the retired couple who came every Wednesday for the breakfast special. "Morning, Lily," Carlos called from behind the counter where he was fixing the espresso machine. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well. "Rough night?" Lily asked, grabbing the coffee pot to make her rounds. Carlos sighed, wiping his hands on a towel. "Still haven't found a replacement pianist for Friday. I've called everyone I know, but it's too short notice." He shook his head. "First time in 5 years we might not have music for the weekend crowd." Lily nodded sympathetically and began her usual routine, but her mind kept returning to the piano in the corner. All night she had tossed and turned, thinking about Carlos's problem, and the opportunity it presented. She had even practiced some of her performance pieces on her keyboard before bed just in case. In case of what? She wasn't seriously considering offering to play, was she? The morning rush kept her busy enough to push the thought aside. She moved from table to table with practiced ease, remembering who liked extra cream, who wanted their eggs over hard, who needed refills without asking. Some people barely looked up from their phones when she served them, while others chatted so long she had to politely excuse herself to tend to other tables. Around 10:30, when the breakfast crowd had thinned, Rita came in for her shift, bringing with her the scent of cigarettes and flowery perfume. "You would not believe the morning I've had," Rita announced, dropping her purse under the counter. "My car wouldn't start, had to take the bus, and some teenager nearly knocked me over rushing to get on. People these days, I swear." Lily listened to Rita's complaints with half an ear, nodding at the right moments while wiping down tables. Rita was a good coworker, efficient during rush hours and generous with splitting tips, but she could talk the ear off a statue. "And Carlos says we might not have music this weekend," Rita was saying now. "That'll hurt business. People come for the music as much as the food on Fridays." "I know," Lily said. "He's been trying to find someone." Rita lowered her voice. "Between you and me, I think he's worried about more than just this weekend. That piano player's been talking about moving to the city for months. Carlos might need a permanent replacement soon." This was news to Lily. She glanced at the piano again, imagining what it would be like to play there regularly. The thought sent a nervous flutter through her stomach. The bell above the door chimed and a large group entered. A tour bus had stopped nearby and suddenly the cafe was bustling again. Lily and Rita fell into their familiar rhythm, taking orders, delivering food, and keeping coffee cups full. Carlos jumped in to help, taking orders at the register and occasionally delivering plates when things got particularly hectic. It was during this rush that disaster struck. Carlos was carrying a tray loaded with plates to a table near the back when a child darted in front of him. He swerved to avoid the kid, lost his balance, and came down hard on his right foot as he tried to steady the tray. The plates made it safely to their destination, but Carlos's face had gone white with pain. He limped back to the counter, trying to hide his discomfort. "You okay, boss?" Lily asked, noticing his uneven gait. Fine, he insisted. But when the rush died down, Lily found him in the back office, his shoe off and foot propped up on a chair. His ankle was already swelling. "That needs ice," she said firmly, heading to the kitchen before he could protest. When she returned with an ice pack, Carlos was on the phone again, still trying to find a musician for Friday. She handed him the ice and listened as he got another rejection. "Please, just consider it," he was saying. "It's only for a couple of hours. I understand you've got other commitments, but..." He sighed. "All right, thanks anyway." He hung up and groaned, both from the pain in his ankle and the stress of the situation. "Carlos, you need to get that checked out," Lily said, nodding toward his swollen ankle. "No time. I've got a business to run." He tried to stand but winced and sat back down. Rita poked her head in. "Ambulance is here." "Ambulance?" "I didn't call an ambulance." Carlos protested. "I did," said Rita unapologetically. "My brother broke his ankle last year." "Looked just like that. Better safe than sorry." Despite Carlos's objections, the paramedics convinced him to go to the hospital for an X-ray. He reluctantly handed the cafe keys to Lily. "Lock up tonight, will you? And please, if you think of anyone who could play piano this weekend, let me know." As the ambulance drove away, Lily and Rita exchanged looks. "He's going to be on crutches," Rita predicted, "which means we're picking up the slack." The rest of the day was unusually busy, as if the universe was testing them with Carlos absent. By closing time, Lily's feet ached, and she still had to count the day's earnings and lockup. Rita helped her clean up, then left to relieve her babysitter. Alone in the quiet cafe, Lily found herself drawn once again to the piano. She sat on the bench and ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. Then, almost without thinking, she began to play. The melody was soft at first, a gentle exploration of the instrument. It had been years since she'd played on a real piano instead of her digital keyboard. The weight of the keys felt different, the sound richer and more resonant. She played a simple piece from memory, one she had learned as a teenager, then transitioned into something more complex. She lost track of time, moving from one piece to another, occasionally making mistakes but quickly recovering. The empty cafe became her private concert hall, and she allowed herself to play with more emotion than she usually did in her apartment, where thin walls meant keeping the volume modest. That's beautiful. The voice startled her so badly she slammed the keys in a discordant crash and spun around. An elderly man stood in the doorway, leaning on a cane. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I left my reading glasses, and when I heard the music..." He gestured to a table where a pair of glasses lay. "I didn't know the cafe had a new pianist." "Oh, I'm not..." Lily began, then stopped. I just work here. As a waitress." "Could have fooled me," the man said, retrieving his glasses. He was a regular customer, Mr. Abernathy, if she remembered correctly. He came in a few times a week and always left generous tips. "You play like someone who spent years practicing." Lily felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you. I used to play a lot." "Well, you should play a lot now," he said matter-of-factly. "Talent like that shouldn't be hidden." After he left, Lily sat at the piano a while longer, not playing, just thinking. She thought about her abandoned music degree, about the years spent hiding her passion, about how it felt to play on a real piano again. She thought about Carlos and his ankle, about the weekend performances, about Mr. Abernathy's words. By the time she locked the cafe and headed home, a plan was forming in her mind. She wasn't ready to admit it to herself yet, but with each step the idea grew stronger. The next morning, she arrived early and was surprised to see Carlos's car in the lot. She found him inside, his right foot in a walking boot, struggling to rearrange tables. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "You should be resting that ankle." "Hairline fracture," he said dismissively. "Doctor says I'll live. I've got the boot for support." He tried to move a chair and winced. "Besides, tables need to be rearranged for Friday." "No point now, I suppose, since we won't have music, but it's habit." Lily hesitated, her heart pounding. The words she'd rehearsed on the way to work suddenly seemed inadequate. "About Friday," she began, then paused, gathering her courage. Carlos looked up, noticing her nervous expression. "What about it?" "I could play," she said quickly before she could change her mind. "The piano, I mean. I could fill in for your regular musician." Carlos's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You? But you said you only played a little as a hobby." Lily twisted her apron in her hands. "I might have downplayed it a bit. I've actually been playing since I was 8. I studied music for 2 years in college before I had to drop out." "You're serious?" Carlos looked from her to the piano and back again, as if seeing her in a new light. "I practiced some pieces last night," she continued. "I'm a bit rusty for performing, but I think I can handle a 2-hour set on Friday. If you want..." A slow smile spread across Carlos's face. "Lily, if you can play half as well as you wait tables, you'll be perfect." He extended his hand. "You've got yourself a gig." As they shook hands, Lily felt a mixture of terror and excitement. After years of keeping her talent hidden, she had just agreed to perform in front of a cafe full of people, many of whom were her regular customers. What had she gotten herself into? But beneath the fear was something else, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The thrill of a new beginning. The next 2 days passed in a blur for Lily. By day, she waited tables as usual, taking orders and delivering food with the same friendly efficiency her customers expected. But her mind was elsewhere, mentally rehearsing pieces and planning her set list for Friday night. During her breaks, she snuck to the piano to test out songs, keeping the volume low and stopping whenever customers approached. After closing each night, she stayed late, practicing until her fingers ached and Carlos insisted she go home to rest. "You'll do fine," he assured her on Thursday evening as he locked up behind them. "From what I've heard, you could play circles around most of the musicians we've had here." His confidence should have been comforting, but it only added to the pressure Lily felt building inside her chest. She hadn't performed in front of an audience since her second year of college. What if she froze? What if she hit wrong notes? What if the regular customers who knew her as just a waitress thought she was making a fool of herself? "I'm not sure about the song selection," she said, clutching the list she'd made. "Maybe I should stick to background music. Nothing too showy." Carlos shook his head. "Play what makes you happy. The crowd will feel that." When she arrived home, Lily sat at her keyboard until midnight, going through her planned pieces again and again. Her apartment neighbor knocked on the wall once, a gentle reminder of the late hour, and she reluctantly switched to headphones. Even in bed, music filled her head. She fell asleep imagining the cafe filled with people, their eyes on her instead of their meals. Friday arrived, and with it, a knot of anxiety in Lily's stomach that made it impossible to eat breakfast. She arrived at the cafe early, her hands slightly shaky as she tied her apron. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Rita commented, eyeing her pale face. Carlos had told the staff about Lily's upcoming performance, and Rita had been surprisingly supportive, promising to handle more tables during the dinner rush so Lily could prepare. "Just nervous," Lily admitted, busying herself with filling salt shakers to steady her hands. "Stage fright, huh? My cousin's a singer. Gets sick before every show. Says it's normal?" Rita patted her shoulder. "You'll be great. And hey, if you mess up, most of these people are too busy looking at their phones to notice anyway." It was meant to be reassuring, but the thought of playing while people scrolled through social media instead of listening made Lily's heart sink a little. Would anyone even care about her music? Maybe that would be better. Less pressure if no one was really paying attention. The morning and afternoon passed too quickly. Regular customers who'd heard about her upcoming performance stopped by her tables to wish her luck. "I didn't know you played, honey," said Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who came in for lunch every Friday. "Can't wait to hear you tonight," added a young man who worked at the bookstore next door. Their kind words both warmed and terrified her. People were actually planning to come hear her play. The thought made her drop a water glass, which shattered on the floor. "Maybe I should cancel," she whispered to Carlos as she swept up the broken pieces. "Not a chance," he replied firmly. "I've already put up signs and posted about it online. We've got reservations for tonight like we haven't seen in months." By 6 o'clock, an hour before her performance was scheduled to begin, the cafe was already filling up. Carlos had arranged the tables to face the piano, which had been moved slightly to create a better performance space. Someone had even brought flowers, which now sat in a vase atop the piano. Lily changed in the bathroom, swapping her waitress uniform for the outfit she'd carefully selected, black pants and a deep blue blouse that her mother had sent for her birthday. She twisted her hair up, applied a touch of makeup, and stared at her reflection, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. Without the familiar apron and order pad, she looked like a different person. A soft knock on the door startled her. 10 minutes, Rita called, and there's someone here to see you. Confused, Lily opened the door to find not only Rita but also her parents standing in the narrow hallway. "Mom?" "Dad?" she gasped. "What are you doing here?" Her mother stepped forward to hug her. "Carlos called us, said our daughter was finally playing again and we shouldn't miss it. We drove up as soon as we heard," her father added, his eyes crinkling with pride. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. She hadn't seen her parents in months. The 6-hour drive and their work schedules made visits rare. And now they were here, about to watch her play for the first time since she'd left school. "I'm so nervous," she admitted, clinging to her mother's hand. "You'll be wonderful," her mother assured her, "just like you always were." The cafe had gone quiet when Lily finally emerged. Every table was full, and additional chairs had been brought in to accommodate the crowd. She recognized many faces, regular customers, neighboring shop owners, even her landlord from the apartment building. Carlos stood by the piano, his ankle boot making him slightly off balance as he raised his hands for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. For those of you who only know her as the person who brings your coffee and pancakes, you're in for a surprise. I'm proud to introduce our very own Lily, who will be playing for us tonight." The crowd applauded warmly as Lily made her way to the piano. Her legs felt like jelly, and her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She sat on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and took a deep breath. The keys looked suddenly foreign under her fingers, and for one terrifying moment, she couldn't remember a single note of all the pieces she'd practiced. She glanced up, scanning the crowd, and caught her father's encouraging nod. Next to him, her mother mouthed, "You've got this." Lily placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes were hesitant, a simple melody she'd known since childhood. She kept her eyes fixed on her fingers, too afraid to look at the audience. The piece was meant to be merely a warm-up, something easy to settle her nerves. But as the familiar tune flowed from her fingers, something shifted. The knot in her stomach began to loosen. The cafe and its watching eyes seemed to fade away, leaving only Lily and the music. Her fingers found their confidence and the melody grew stronger. She transitioned into her second piece without a pause, this one more complex. Now her hands moved with assurance, drawing rich sounds from the old piano. She risked a glance at the audience and saw something she hadn't expected. Genuine attention. Phones had been put away. Conversations had stopped. Everyone was watching, listening. Mrs. Henderson was smiling with closed eyes, swaying slightly. The bookstore clerk leaned forward in his chair, chin resting on his hands. Even Rita, standing by the counter, had paused in her work to listen. Encouraged, Lily allowed herself to get lost in the music. She played pieces she'd loved in college, Chopin, Debussy, Einaudi. She added flourishes she hadn't practiced, let herself experiment with tempo and feeling. The piano, which had seemed intimidating minutes earlier, now felt like an old friend welcoming her back. When she finished her third piece, the crowd burst into applause that startled her from her musical trance. She'd been so absorbed in playing that she'd almost forgotten they were there. "Thank you," she said softly into the unexpected quiet as the applause died down. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Not the voice of a waitress taking orders, but of a performer addressing an audience. She began a fourth piece, this one livelier than the others. Her body swayed with the rhythm, and she found herself smiling as her fingers danced across the keys. The crowd seemed to respond to her enjoyment, with some people tapping their feet or nodding along. At a table near the front, Mr. Abernathy, the elderly man who had caught her playing after hours, beamed at her with a look that clearly said, "I told you so." Her parents watched with tears in their eyes, perhaps remembering the little girl who had once played simple tunes on her grandmother's keyboard, never imagining she would one day captivate a room full of strangers. As Lily moved from piece to piece, she felt something awakening inside her that had been dormant for too long. This wasn't just about playing the piano or performing for an audience. It was about reclaiming a part of herself she had set aside, the part that dreamed, that created, that dared. For the first time in years, Lily felt completely alive, completely herself. And as her fingers struck the final chords of her sixth piece, she knew with absolute certainty that her life had just changed forever. The applause after Lily's first hour of playing was so enthusiastic that she blushed deeply, unused to such attention. Carlos announced a 15-minute break, and immediately people surrounded the piano, offering compliments and asking questions. "Where did you study? How long have you been playing? Do you know any jazz pieces?" Overwhelmed, Lily answered politely but briefly, her eyes searching for a moment of escape. Rita appeared with a glass of water, nudging through the small crowd. "Give the girl some space to breathe, folks," she said, handing Lily the water. "She's been playing her heart out." Gratefully, Lily sipped the cool liquid, her fingers slightly stiff from the unaccustomed workout. Her parents waited patiently until the crowd had thinned before approaching. "You were magnificent, sweetheart," her mother said, embracing her, just like I remembered. Her father's eyes were suspiciously moist. "Your grandmother would have been so proud," he said quietly. "She always said you had magic in those fingers." The mention of her grandmother, the woman who had first introduced her to music, brought a lump to Lily's throat. "I wish she could have been here," she whispered. "Oh, she is," her mother assured her. "Somehow I'm sure she is." Carlos limped over, beaming with pride like he had discovered a rare treasure. "I've never seen the cafe this packed on a Friday," he told her. "And everyone's ordering food and drinks like crazy. Rita can barely keep up." "I can help," Lily offered automatically, half rising from the piano bench. "Don't you dare," Carlos laughed. "I've called in Tom from the morning shift to help out. Your job tonight is right here." He patted the piano. "Think you can handle another hour?" Lily nodded, surprising herself with her eagerness to continue. The nervousness that had nearly paralyzed her earlier had transformed into a pleasant excitement. She was enjoying herself more than she had in years. As she began her second set, she felt more confident, engaging with the audience between pieces, even taking a few requests. When someone called out for a popular song, she improvised an elegant piano version that had people smiling in recognition. Near the back of the cafe, a tall man in a crisp suit watched with particular interest, occasionally making notes on his phone. Lily noticed him but thought nothing of it, assuming he was just another customer. The second hour passed even more quickly than the first. And when Lily played her final piece, an emotional rendition of a classical favorite, the crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. She stood, bowing awkwardly, unused to such recognition. "Encore!" someone shouted, and others joined in. Lily looked to Carlos, who nodded enthusiastically. She sat back down and thought for a moment, then began to play a piece she had composed herself during those lonely nights in her apartment. It was a melody that spoke of longing and hope, of dreams deferred but not forgotten. She had never played it for anyone before, and her heart raced as her fingers brought the private piece to life. The cafe fell completely silent. Even the staff paused in their work to listen. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of hushed appreciation before the applause began again, even more thunderous than before. "That last piece," a woman asked as people gathered around once more. "What was it called?" "I'd love to find the sheet music." "Oh," Lily said, caught off guard. "It doesn't really have a name. It's just something I wrote." "You wrote that?" The woman looked impressed. "It's beautiful." More compliments followed, along with business cards pressed into her hand and requests for private lessons. Lily's head spun with the sudden attention. Just yesterday, these same people had seen her as nothing more than the person who brought their food. As the crowd finally began to disperse, the well-dressed man from the back approached. He introduced himself as David, a talent scout for a prestigious music academy in the city. "I was meeting a friend for coffee," he explained, "and I certainly didn't expect to discover someone like you. Your technique needs some refinement, but your emotional expression is remarkable." He handed her his card. "We're always looking for instructors with both skill and heart. If you're interested, I'd like to hear you play again in a more formal setting." Lily stared at the card, hardly able to believe what was happening. A teaching position? At a real music academy? It seemed too good to be true. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll definitely call you." As the cafe emptied and Rita began clearing tables, Lily's parents hugged her goodbye, promising to return soon. They had booked a room at a nearby hotel and planned to have breakfast at the cafe the next morning before heading home. "We're so proud of you," her father said, kissing the top of her head like he had when she was small. "Always knew you'd find your way back to music someday." After they left, Lily sat at the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys, not playing, just feeling the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. The cafe felt different now, as if the space itself had been transformed by the music that had filled it. Carlos sat beside her on the bench, his walking boot propped awkwardly to one side. "So," he said casually, "I heard you talking to that music school guy." "Yeah," Lily said, still trying to process everything that had happened. "He offered me a teaching position, or at least a chance at one." Carlos nodded thoughtfully. "Going to take it?" The question hung in the air between them, was she? After years of putting her dreams aside, was she ready to step back into that world? "I don't know," she answered honestly. "It's all happening so fast." Carlos was quiet for a moment. "Well, before you decide, I have a proposition for you." He gestured around the empty cafe. "Tonight was our busiest night in months. People loved you, Lily. They'll come back to hear you play again." "What are you saying?" Lily asked, though she thought she knew. "I'm saying I need a regular pianist and you need a regular gig. 2 nights a week to start, Friday and Saturday. Decent pay, plus you keep all tips." He grinned. "And you can still wait tables the rest of the week if you want. Though something tells me you might be busy with piano students soon." Lily's mind raced with possibilities. She could keep her job at the cafe, which provided steady income and a community she'd grown to love. She could play regularly, rebuilding her confidence and repertoire. And maybe, just maybe, she could explore the opportunity at the music academy as well. "I'd like that," she said finally, returning his smile. "Thank you, Carlos." "Don't thank me," he replied, standing with a slight wince. "I'm the one getting the better deal here. Now help an old man lock up, would you?" It's been quite a night. As they moved around the cafe, turning off lights and checking doors, Lily's phone buzzed with notifications. Rita had posted a video clip of her performance online, and it was already gathering comments and shares. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years were messaging, congratulating her and expressing amazement. "You're going viral," Carlos joked, peeking over her shoulder at the phone. "Hardly," Lily laughed, but she was touched by the positive responses. One comment in particular caught her eye, from her old piano professor at the university, who wrote, Always knew you had it in you. Never too late to return to what you love. Walking home that night, Lily felt lighter than she had in years. The cool evening air carried the distant sounds of the city, car horns, faint music from a bar down the street, the chatter of people enjoying the start of their weekend. But for once, the noise didn't feel lonely. It felt like possibility. In her apartment, she sat at her keyboard, touching the plastic keys that had been her only musical outlet for so long. After playing on a real piano again, they felt different under her fingers, less substantial somehow. But they had kept her connected to music during all those years when she thought her dreams were on hold. She began to play softly, improvising a new melody that seemed to capture the emotions of the evening: surprise, joy, gratitude, hope. As the music filled her small living room, Lily realized something important. She had never really left her dreams behind. She had only set them aside for a while, and now, like old friends waiting patiently for her return, they were welcoming her back with open arms. 3 months had passed since Lily's first performance at the downtown corner cafe. Summer had faded into autumn, and the streets outside were lined with golden leaves that danced in the breeze. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere had changed too. New artwork hung on the walls, mostly music-themed pieces from local artists. The piano had been professionally tuned and polished, now proudly positioned as the cafe's centerpiece rather than an afterthought in the corner. On this particular Friday evening, a small chalkboard sign stood outside the entrance. Tonight, Lily Thomas, 7 p.m., standing room only. Standing room only wasn't an exaggeration. For the past 12 weekends, the cafe had been packed to capacity whenever Lily played. Carlos had even started a reservation system after too many disappointed customers were turned away at the door. In the back office, Lily sat looking at her reflection in a small mirror, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Her waitress uniform hung unused on a hook nearby. She hadn't served tables in almost a month now. Between her performances at the cafe, private piano students, and part-time teaching at the music academy in the city, she barely had time to catch her breath, let alone carry coffee cups. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. 5 minutes, Rita called. And there's already a line down the block. Lily took a deep breath, smoothing the fabric of her dress, a simple but elegant black one she'd bought with her first real paycheck as a musician. How strange life was, she thought. Just a few months ago, she had been too afraid to play in front of anyone. Now she was drawing crowds from across town. The video Rita had posted of that first night had indeed gone viral, at least locally. A local news station had even done a short feature about her, From Serving Tables to Serving Music, a Waitress's Journey. The headline had made Lily cringe, but the publicity had been good for both her and the cafe. As she made her way to the piano, the familiar faces in the crowd warmed her heart. There was Mrs. Henderson in her usual spot, now accompanied by friends from her retirement community. Mr. Abernathy sat near the front, as he did every Friday, his cane propped against his chair. The bookstore clerk was there too, this time with a date who looked impressed to have secured a table. And in the back, trying to blend in but failing due to his height, was Professor Wilson from the music department at the State University, her old teacher. He had reached out after seeing the video, and they had met for coffee several times to discuss her future. The words he had spoken at their last meeting still rang in her ears. The scholarship is still available if you want to finish your degree. The department would be thrilled to have you back. The possibility hovered in her mind as she took her seat at the piano. A hush fell over the room, the kind of respectful silence she had once feared but now cherished. She smiled at the audience, no longer strangers but a community that had embraced her talent and her journey. "Good evening," she said into the small microphone Carlos had installed for her. "Thank you all for coming." As always, she began with a piece that felt like a warm greeting, her fingers finding the notes with the confidence that came from hours of practice and the joy of doing what she loved. The music flowed through her without effort now, each piece telling a story, carrying emotions she once kept hidden. Between songs, she shared brief anecdotes, the history behind a classical piece, the story of how she had composed one of her original works, a funny moment from one of her piano lessons. The audience laughed and nodded, no longer just listening to her play but connecting with her as a person. Halfway through her set, the cafe door opened, letting in a blast of cool air and a few latecomers. Among them was David, the talent scout who had offered her the teaching position at the academy. He caught her eye and gave an approving nod. In his hand was a folder that she knew contained a contract, a formal offer for a full-time position teaching advanced students. Another choice, another possibility for her future. She acknowledged him with a small smile before turning back to the keys. This next piece was new, something she had been working on for weeks, pouring into it all the changes and choices of the past months. As she played, she thought about how far she had come from that nervous waitress who had hidden her talent for so long. The piece built slowly, starting with a simple, hesitant melody that grew in complexity and confidence, much like her own journey. When she reached the triumphant final section, she felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from the pure joy of creating something beautiful and sharing it with others. The applause that followed seemed to last forever. When it finally quieted, she thanked the audience and announced a short break. As she stood, Carlos approached with a small cake topped with a single candle. "What's this?" she asked, surprised. 3 months since your first performance," he explained. "Thought we should celebrate." The audience broke into applause again as Carlos awkwardly balanced on his heeled ankle to place the cake on top of the piano. Rita appeared with small plates and forks, and soon everyone was enjoying a piece of the impromptu celebration. As Lily mingled with the guests during the break, she found herself face to face with David and Professor Wilson, who had apparently arranged to meet here tonight. They each laid out their offers: the teaching position at the academy, which would mean steady income and prestige, or returning to university to complete her degree, which would mean student life again but also the credentials that could open even more doors. "Take your time deciding," Professor Wilson said kindly. "The offer won't expire." "The academy would be lucky to have you," David added, "but so would any institution. Your talent deserves the best possible platform." As they spoke, Carlos caught her eye from across the room, pointing to his watch. Break time was ending. The audience was returning to their seats, eager for the second half of her performance. "I should get back to the piano," Lily said. "Can we talk more after the show?" They nodded, understanding that tonight the music came first. As she returned to the bench, Lily felt a strange sense of peace despite the decisions that loomed before her. 3 paths stretched ahead: the academy with its prestige and immediate career, the university with its promise of completed education, or the cafe with its warmth and community. Each offered something valuable, something that called to different parts of her heart. But as her fingers touched the keys again, she realized something important. Whatever she chose, the music would remain. It had been inside her all along, waiting patiently through years of self-doubt and detours. It would be with her wherever she went next. For her final piece of the evening, she played the very first song her grandmother had taught her, a simple, beautiful melody that had started her on this path so many years ago. In her mind, she could almost see her grandmother smiling, could almost hear her voice saying what she always used to say: "Music is never just about the notes, dear heart. It's about finding your own song and having the courage to play it." Lily understood those words now more than ever. She had found her song again, and the courage to play it had transformed her life. As the final notes faded and the audience rose once more in appreciation, Lily knew that whatever path she chose next, it would be with music at its center. The waitress who had hidden her talent for so long had become the musician who now shared it openly, and there was no going back to the shadows. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the cafe was quiet, Lily sat alone at the piano, playing softly for no one but herself. Carlos was counting the night's impressive earnings, and Rita had gone home early with a headache. In the peaceful emptiness, Lily could feel the presence of all who had helped her reach this moment: her parents who had sacrificed for her lessons, her grandmother who had first shown her the magic of music, her professors who had nurtured her talent, Carlos who had given her a chance when she most needed it, and all the strangers turned friends who had applauded her journey back to herself. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty room, her fingers still moving across the keys, creating beauty from silence. Outside, the autumn wind rustled the leaves, carrying away the last notes of music from the cafe where a waitress had astounded the crowd and, in doing so, had found her way home to her own heart's truth.